I am Ross Hawkins, the Director of the Academic Advising and Transfer Center at Missouri State University. And this forum today is Ally is a Verb, how to use your voice to advocate for trans and gender nonconforming students. Our lead presenter is Matt Scott. Again, Matt, thank you for your willingness to be here today and present on this important topic. I will turn it over to you.
It's always the microphone, right? Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. I love seeing everyone on Zoom land and really excited about doing this third and final part of this workshop series. So I'm going to start my slideshow. Give me a second to make sure I do this correctly. All right. And as I go through, as you have questions, feel free to put those into chat. Near the end of the session, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. And so we'll be doing a short breakout room and then coming back. And after that breakout room, we'll answer some of those questions. So I won't, for my own clarity of thought, I won't be watching the chat as we go, but I'll look at the end and then I'll answer any questions we have. So thank you for being here. So this, if you weren't a part of this series back in the spring, this is actually part 3, although you don't necessarily need to have watched either of the first 2 to benefit from today's session. But the nice thing is, because we were on Zoom, we were able to record both of those first 2 sessions. Those first 2 sessions incorporated a lot of great footage of local trans and gender nonconforming individuals sharing their own personal stories. And so if you didn't get to see those sessions, I would really encourage you to watch those on your own time. You can email me, mattscott@missourustate.edu, and I can send you those links so you can watch those. Those are videos that you can also share with your classroom. You just can't share the link directly with the student. So I can send you that if you are interested. I can give you that information, but welcome. So real quick, this session we've entitled Ally is a Verb. Part of being an ally is doing our own homework and learning in areas where we have any area that we feel like we need to kind of grow in. So we've started out the last 2 sessions with a quick conversation of terminology. Here are some common terms that we may use today. Transgender and cisgender are common ones that I believe we're probably all familiar with. But any of these terms that you're not familiar with, we won't have the time to do a deep dive kind of comparing them, but I would encourage you to jot a note to yourself about looking after this session. That'll be part of your own homework as an ally, and just continuing being aware of the language around the LGBTQ community. So in this session, I'm just going to use the umbrella term TGNC, transgender and gender nonconforming, as my umbrella term. It's not a perfect term. No term is perfect, but that's what I'll use in this session. All right, so I want to start off with the intention for the session. This is my hope by the end of this session that you'll have an opportunity to think through what is an action step that I need to take in the coming weeks to become a better ally to transgender and gender nonconforming colleagues and students. So we've been doing a lot of thinking and processing all important stuff as an ally, but if we aren't actually taking action and actually doing the work, then it's all for naught. So it's really important that we actually take the next step of taking action. And that's what this whole series is about, or this last workshop is about. All right, so in a second here, I'm going to introduce my co-presenter for this session, but I wanted just to do some initial framework. So part of being an ally, probably the most common thing we do as an ally is using our voice to help support those that may not have the power or position to make change or move a needle. We have a unique opportunity as allies. So there are different tools that we have in our toolbox and how we address issues that come up in our classroom or in an office setting. And that's two of the common ones are calling people out versus calling people in. So if you did watch the previous workshops, there was a guest Anthony, who had talked in the interview series about a really aggressive person that came up to him in a restaurant and just started going after him, and how small he felt and how much he wished he had an ally. In those settings where the person is very aggressive and it's not clear that they have any desire to be empathetic or caring or compassionate, sometimes we just have to call out that behavior. However, in our setting at Missouri State, and in many settings, we're actually dealing with people that do have a desire to do the right thing or to learn and grow, but just may not have yet learned how to handle certain situations. And so that's what we're calling in, this idea that we are all on the spectrum of being an ally, that we're all on this journey. None of us have arrived. We all have places that we can learn and grow and develop. And instead of calling someone out on their behavior, we're calling people in to the work of being an ally, inviting people in. And from that perspective, verbally communicating that we have trust that this person wants to do better and we want to support them in their journey. So just for the sake of this presentation, I pulled 6 principles of healthy dialogue. I stole these from books written down there at the bottom, but I just thought this would be a nice framework before we go into some illustrations of what dialogue will look like. And so having this healthy dialogue as an ally, calling people into the work could look like using some of these principles here. So the first thing is starting with the end in mind. So the idea is I am starting with the end in mind. My goal is to help my colleague or my student to move the needle on their journey on an allyship. And so if that's the long-term goal, then that's how I might craft my approach to ensure that that's what happens, that they have that opportunity to grow and don't feel necessarily blamed or shamed for not knowing something, but that we as the allies can create that space for them to learn and grow. Second is that we listen first. So this is a really beneficial thing, especially in conversations that can provoke feelings or tension or insecurities, giving the person that I'm talking to the opportunity to share their perspective. And I, as a listener, am listening for feelings and needs, and then maybe reflecting back that in the conversation. So you're going to see all of these demonstrated here in a second, but that's the second there. Third, shifting your thinking from me to we. It's very important that as allies that we do not project this idea that I have it figured out and I am blessing my colleagues and my students with my grand knowledge. This idea that we're all on this journey, that we all have places to grow, and that the place that maybe somebody else's may be where I was a year ago. And so this idea that we're all working together, want to support everybody in their ally journey. Speaking from personal experience, again, as an ally, I wasn't where I am today. I wasn't there a week ago. I wasn't there a year ago. I've been on my own journey. And so I can share my personal experiences as an ally to help someone else better understand maybe what their next steps can be. Have and maintain a sense of humor. This is just one tool, but part of this is just acknowledging that this conversation can feel heavy, and a lot of us have some insecurities about being an ally. And so helping to create some sort of camaraderie and lightness can be useful in the right context. Finally, reflecting and evaluate. This is important for if I am the person that's helping process through some situation, I still need to go back after that dialogue and really think through, how did I handle that situation? Did that person feel like they were safe enough that they could process through? What can I be doing differently to help support people in their ally journey? All right, so That's just a quick and dirty of a healthy dialogue. We're going to be utilizing these principles in the next section here. So I'm going to invite my dear friend, Krista Mancato, who helped me in my very first Safe Zone training that I gave many years ago. She was my co-presenter, so it's a pleasure to have her here. I'll let her introduce herself and then have her introduce the next section.
My name's Krista Mancato, as you heard. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm a program coordinator at the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. I'm the coordinator for the Inclusive Excellence in the Ozarks. So we do equity trainings for our nonprofit agencies all across the region and southern, from the Missouri River on south. So if you have anybody that is interested in going through an equity process and kind of looking at their policies and procedures, that's a nonprofit in Southern Missouri, please send them my way. So we're going to go ahead and get started on our first scenario. I'm going to play the ally and Matt is going to be the colleague. And in this situation, the colleague is going to use the wrong pronouns in a meeting or a classroom setting when we're discussing Taylor, who is a student who recently came out as non-binary and using they, them pronouns. Something that I would like you to consider while you're watching us have this dialogue is, would this be different or should it be different if the student was in the room or not present?
So I'm going to turn off the presentation for a second so you can see our beautiful faces. And this is just an opportunity to hear if this isn't a conversation you typically have or have ever had and are really curious how to use your words as an ally, then these are situations that might help. So I am going to start off this scenario. Here we go. All right. So Krista, I wanted to talk to you about Taylor. I'm really concerned about Taylor. She's been out of the classroom for 2 weeks, and I think it's because of COVID that I haven't seen her for this time, but she's really, really behind.
Yeah, she's really, see, and then I just did it. Did you see the email about Taylor coming out as non-binary and using they, them pronouns?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, and then I just misgendered them also. So maybe this is a good opportunity for us to practice using gender neutral pronouns for Taylor and using they and them as their pronouns that they informed us that they want us to use.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that. I wasn't even thinking, and I'm still switching my brain over. So I appreciate that. And yes, absolutely. Let's practice. Yeah. So Taylor hasn't been in for several weeks. They said that they had COVID, and now I'm starting to worry about her. She just seems like they that they are struggling. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
Like I get so, it's so hard for me, especially since I met the student before they changed her pronouns. It's really, really difficult. So
yeah, it's not an easy transition. Something that's helped me a little bit is to really think about, and I'm by no means perfect at it at all, but I try really hard to degender a lot of my language. So instead of like, if you're talking about boys and girls, saying students or things like that. And I think we've shifted to a lot of that, but pronouns is kind of our last hitch in that giddy up. So.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to help remind me, because I would much rather fail in this setting than in front of Taylor. So
yeah, we're definitely in this together.
And see.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a very common one. And it's one we wanted to start with. We'll move on to the next scenario here, and I'll introduce this one. So I have a colleague, Krista, that expresses confusion over Laverne, who is a student of ours, who once identified as gay, but now identifies as trans. And so, Krista, am I remembering correctly that you start off this scenario?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll again turn off the share screen, and so we can begin here.
Hey, Matt, did you see that? Or no, I'm thinking about the wrong scenario. Sorry. Line. Let's can we have a do-over here?
Yes.
My jitters got me. All right. So hey Matt, did you see Laverne? And I don't get it. Like, he's totally fine being a gay man. Like, why does he have to change now? Like, it's okay if he's a man that likes other men. Like, that is fine. Love is love. So I really am struggling with this because I want to support Laverne, but I'm really worried that this is like a trend or a new cool thing, or you know,
Yeah.
like, I'm just worried about Laverne, and
Yeah.
I don't know that this is good for them.
Thank you for being willing to even talk to me about this, because I think this is important. I can relate to that feeling of, because at least as far as I can remember, I don't remember in college ever meeting anyone that was openly trans. And so this all feels a bit new. And I'm wondering if that's kind of this feeling of like, what's exactly happening. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think for me, Laverne has a lot of bravery to be coming to us and sharing this, and how important this is for Laverne, and using her pronouns. I think something that really helped me, so I have a friend, Anthony, that, so I for many years, I didn't really understand the nuance and the differences between someone who identifies as gay and why at some point that they might identify as trans. So I have a friend that actually identified as a lesbian and then eventually came out as trans. And I had that same moment of trying to process through and make the transition with them. Something that they said that really stuck with me was how throughout our time in history that we've always had something that we've had to process through. So right now, as a culture, we are now being more aware of trans and gender nonconforming identities. And at first, we're all kind of trying to understand how to make a shift or better understand these journeys. But it's really not much different than where we were maybe 20 years ago with people that were gay and lesbian, trying to understand who they are and their desire to be married to someone of the same sex. Again, not that much different than people maybe 40, 50, 60 years ago that were in interracial couples and how they were, how that important that was for them. And again, back in the civil rights and all the segregation. And so I can relate to this moment of time, like this is something, a shift is happening and we're becoming more aware. And for those of us that didn't grow up with open dialogue around this, this can be a challenge. But I feel like what they shared helped me realize like this is probably more about me and my own processing and having to make this adjustment. And so that's what I'm trying to do with Laverne not present in the room, trying to do my own processing, because it's not really Laverne's problem to fix for me of making this shift. And so trying to educate myself. And there's a lot of great resources. I don't know if you want me to send any of these, but there's been some really great documentaries on Netflix. I watched a series on Hulu that was quite good. There's also on campus here at Missouri State, Safe Zone. Greg Garris just started a really nice 4-part Safe Zone training. All of that I think could be useful. Do you feel like any of that would maybe help in your case?
Yeah, because I really care about them. You know, we've been friends for a long time, and I'm really okay. I don't understand or don't get it, but I know that I appreciate you saying that it is our problem. So yeah, I appreciate that. I evidently, like, I need to do a little bit more research and kind of think about things a little more, I think.
Yeah. Well, I get it. And as much as is helpful, I'm here if you want to talk. I think this is a great place where you can just kind of process, we can process through together. I think ultimately for me, as I'm doing my own processing, it just ultimately comes down to Laverne needs to feel safe and secure in the classroom and know that she's respected. And so whatever I can do as an instructor to make her feel safe and respected is my job, because I just want her to be able to learn well. And so anyway, I appreciate you coming to me. I know that takes a lot of determination to come and chat about that. So thank you for trusting me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
And all right. All right. So the next one, and I'm having some weird things going on with Zoom. So I'm having difficulty sharing my screen. So I'm just going to say this next one out loud. And then hopefully here in a second, we'll get this all figured out. Okay, so the next one, oh, sorry, this is Krista, you were going to introduce this one.
Oh, sorry. So in this scenario, the colleague is visibly uncomfortable or awkward around Carter, a trans person who identifies as a man and uses he, him pronouns. Hey, Matt, I'm just checking in. I ran into you this morning and you seemed like maybe something was up, like you weren't okay. And I just wanted to check on you. See if everything's all right, or if there's anything I can help you with.
No, I'm good. I don't know how much to really share in the workplace. I don't want to offend anybody. I think I'm just, I'm struggling a bit with the Carter situation.
Yeah, that's a change, I think, for everyone. I know that, you know, he is, he's really struggled with some things, and I think that it's, it is a shift for all of us. I think that he's doing, like, he seems really happy, and like, it's nice to see him really kind of blooming and thriving and exploring his new identity, and like fashion and that kind of stuff has really been cool to see. Is there anything that you want to talk about? I mean, I don't know if, yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying. I honestly, I just cannot wrap my head. This is so foreign to me. Carter's the first trans person I've ever met in person or had a close relationship with. And I was just completely floored. Like, we just came back from Thanksgiving break, and now Carter wants us to use he, him pronouns and use the name Carter even. And maybe it's just because I knew Carter prior to this, and so now she's going by a he, and it's just a lot for my brain. Now, on top of that, this felt particularly awkward, but I went to the bathroom this morning and I was doing my thing at the urinal, and Carter walks in, and I was like a deer in the headlights. So uncomfortable, and I didn't even make eye contact.
Yeah.
I just walked out, and I'm sure I could have handled that better, but I just feel so like,
Yeah,
I've never had a woman, well, a trans, I don't know. I'm struggling.
That's a lot. And I just happened to like meet you right as I was going into the restroom. So I think that's probably right when I ran into you and was kind of concerned. So I'm glad that, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I know that that's not easy. And I don't know if you know this, but personally, we've been, my family has been dealing with this. My older brother's oldest child has come out as non-binary, and they are using they, them pronouns and going by a different name. And that's really been a hard journey for our family. not in that, I mean, we love Colby, we absolutely support, but there is like, Colby was named for our great grandmother, and that's not the name that they're using anymore. And just trying to be supportive as they're a teenager and going through high school, like those extra things are really have been hard. So our family has done some work together with the counselors and therapists for us to kind of understand a little bit more about what they're going through. And I think one of the things that has really helped is as we were like having these conversations and looking back at Colby's life, and something that Colby told us is, look, like, I didn't understand how I felt. I knew that the words that other people and the ideas that that parents and teachers were giving them didn't have, Colby's words were like, none of those words fit me. And I was trying to communicate all along, all through my life, trying to communicate that I wasn't comfortable, but I didn't have the language for it. And so thinking about our own experiences with Colby as a child, like, then it just kind of like clicked and all fell into place, because we were like, well, obviously this has been the issue all along, and everything else was just kind of like a complication because of this one core issue. So I don't know if that is Carter's experience, but that's what I know. And from having a closer relationship now with my nibbling, which is a gender neutral term for instead of niece or nephew, it's nibbling, and I love that, and I think it's super adorable. And so that is also like expanded my world and made me a better person, to made me a better aunt, maybe me a better sister, and it's really brought a lot of beautiful things to our family by us having an open mind and just really looking at this at them as a human, and that I care about you no matter where your journey takes you. I don't know if that's helpful or not. And then all I can give you is my personal experience. I think that it's also like, I'm happy to share some of the resources that counselors have given us, and that have helped us and the family go through things. There's several like folks on Instagram and TikTok that really great advocates that I've followed, and just having that kind of in my day-to-day has also allowed me to look at the whole world with a kind of different perspective. Jeffrey Marsh on TikTok is one that has really helped several of us older family members to kind of wrap our heads around things and to be supportive.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. I didn't know, first of all, that you had somebody that was gender nonconforming in your family, but I'm struggling. Ultimately, I do want Carter to feel comfortable. Like, I don't want to be constantly awkward. And so as much as you can help me process on our own, I'm grateful to have you in the office, because I think you get where I'm coming from. But
yeah. And like, coming from the other, like in the women's restroom, we all have, like, we only use the stalls. So I don't know if like in the meantime, if that might be a more comfortable option for you, if you still are have any like HR concerns around that. Like, that's something that my brother kind of noticed at work, that kind of helped him to be able, when he was working, had some new folks that were transitioning in his workplace. So because it really is on us. Like, Carter is doing, like, we can tell that Carter is doing a whole lot to be able to live as their authentic self. And I think that is really beautiful. And I wish I was more like Carter in that respect.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll have to think more about that. I can't say that I'm fully on board or wrap my head around it, but I do want Carter to feel safe. And so
yeah, and
that's where we start.
I'm always here for that. If you
Yeah.
ever have questions, I'm still on a journey, and so is my family, and so is Colby. So if you don't mind, I can share you some social media accounts and some books
Sure.
that have helped me. And then in the future, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm always here for you, and we can. I appreciate your professionalism and your kindness and support of our students. So I really, I think that you're going to be okay. And we'll keep working on it together.
Thank you. And final scenario finished. All right. So first off, Zoom's doing some weird things for me. So I was a bit distracted in that scenario. I'm going to have to close out and come back in, but it's at least you all can see and hear me. And so what we're actually doing now, this next section, is some time for written reflection. And so when I come back in, I'll actually put these questions on to share them visibly so everyone can see them. But there's 5 questions I'm going to have you reflect on. And so what I'll have you all do in a second is turn off your videos. And as much as possible, try to stay present in this moment. We don't often take an opportunity to really reflect on our role as an ally, what we can be doing differently. So I really challenge everyone, since we're here and we're really trying to grow as allies, to take an opportunity to think through these questions. So I'm going to give you the first 2 questions to reflect on. I'm going to close out, come back in, then you'll be able to see all of them. But the first question is, which of the scenarios you just saw would have been hardest for you to navigate? Where would you have had difficulty even initiating a conversation? And maybe what would you have done better? Honestly, there's some things that we each could have done better. We're all trying to figure out the right words and language and making sure we find the right balance. And so what might you have done in this situation? Second question is, what personal work do you need to do before you would feel comfortable being a vocal ally for trans and gender nonconforming individuals? So maybe you feel like I could not have that conversation. I'm not ready. Well, then the question is, what would you need to do? What's your next step before you would be ready? So I'm going to completely leave Zoom. I will not leave you for long, but I'm going to return so then I can share my slides again. But please, everybody, turn off your videos and find a quiet space. And for the next 10 minutes, we'll be writing. If you have any direct questions for Krista or I in this 10 minutes, feel free to shoot a message directly to us via chat. I will be back in just a minute. All right, so if you didn't get through all the questions, that's fine. I would encourage you to take a quick screenshot or a photo of the questions before we go into breakout rooms. So what we're going to do now is we're going to split you off into groups of 3. And if Laura, if you could help me with that, that would be awesome. And we'll spend, I won't have quite 10 minutes. We'll spend until 5 till in breakout rooms, and then we'll come back for 5 more minutes at the end. So Laura, if you can get the breakout groups going, and then that'd be great. We'll see you back in about 9 minutes here. Awesome. Well, welcome back. So because we have such a large amount of people in this, and I want to get a fair amount of feedback, what I would like you to do is put in the chat bar either one goal that you would like to attempt in the next couple of weeks, or one thing that you walk away with in your toolbox as an ally, and share that out with the group through chat here. Scott brought up safe zone. So I actually was talking with a friend of mine who was in the original interviews from the previous 2 workshops. And he was saying how, like, that was his number one thing, a piece of advice is if you don't have a safe zone sticker or something in your office, that question always strikes me, like, how do students know that you're an ally? Like, finding ways to communicate that. I know I live in Nixa, Missouri. I know the one restaurant that has a safe zone sticker in their window, and I frequent there regularly. So it's definitely encouraging. Yeah, Laura, thank you. Even if you don't have perfect words, saying something can be helpful. Krista and I were talking over break of how we felt a little clumsy in our words, but that actually is probably good modeling of we can't wait around to the moment we have the right, we're going to say it exactly right. We have to figure out, even if it's not quite exactly how we want it to come out, it's using our voice. Yep, finding new terminology. Thank you for sharing the safe zone link. Yeah, I know they, them pronouns, something that many of us doesn't come naturally to, because we were taught at one point in English class that at that point in time that we weren't supposed to use that that way. And so retraining our brains, but how important is that? How defeating is it to tell somebody I use they, them pronouns, and then even after I've told somebody for them not to use those? Thank you for that. So practicing using they, them pronouns, this is something that I did with some of my colleagues, I think back in the spring, is we actually took 5 minutes and went around the circle practicing just telling a story about somebody that's familiar to us using they, them pronouns. So I could talk about my best friend or my brother or whatever, but using they, them pronouns, it's a good tactic for practicing.
I also make sure that if there are any friends in my life that have had babies, that I use gender neutral terminology for their child, because they can't tell us their gender until they get older and they have a framework for that and language for it. So that's been helpful for me.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of good thoughts here. Thank you for everyone sharing. Just continuing to scroll through here. Starting a book club, that would be awesome. Yeah, I think that's another piece of, I incorporated involving trans and gender nonconforming people into the preparation of these workshops, but I didn't ask any of them to be the co-presenter, with the idea that we too often ask marginalized communities to be the one to tell us what to do as allies. And it's really our work to help other allies and support other allies, and not putting that additional emotional labor onto marginalized communities is particularly important. So I love that idea of starting a book club and finding ways to share what you learned with your colleagues. Awesome. Well, thank you all for all of these thoughts. I'm going to stay on the Zoom call, although we are ending, and this is the end of the third of 3 workshops. And so any of those that would like, I'm going to put into the chat bar my email address. If any of you would like to have access to the previous session, let me know. If any of you have questions or thoughts, please share those as well with me. And then stay on if you have any questions you want to ask me. I'll be around for a little bit here for anyone that would like to chat. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for making this a priority over lunch break to learn more about being an ally.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Krista.